Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for standing by and welcome to Visual BI's webinar. Today, we will be discussing why customers need to upgrade to SAP Lumira 2.2, the latest features offered by SAP Lumira 2.2, and why it is essential for customers to upgrade to this version. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. If you have a question during the presentation, please submit it via the Q&A portion of the screen. Simply type your question into the box and click the send button. Our presenter will address questions at the end of the presentation, time permitting. If you don't hear an answer to your question today, don't worry. We will deliver answers to you individually after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded and a link to the replay will be sent to you via email. Presenting today is Ishwar. Ishwar is a lead BI consultant who has been specializing in SAP BusinessObjects Design Studio, Lumira Designer since the tool's introduction. His responsibilities include consulting, designing, and implementing dashboards, applications, and training customers on SAP BusinessObjects Design Studio. I will now turn the presentation over to the presenter.
Thank you, Gladys. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar today. Our topic for today focuses largely on the newest version of SAP Lumira, SAP Lumira 2.2. As you all must be aware, SAP made version 2.2 generally available on the 29th of last month. So we've had the tool for about 2 weeks now, and we've had the chance to play around with it for a bit. And we found that Lumira 2.2 has a few cool features added to the tool, especially on the designer side. And we're going to be talking about these new features as part of this webinar. But that's not all we're limiting the session to. We're also going to be covering aspects of upgrades, as well as talk a bit about the roadmap and the future direction. In fact, as part of today's webinar, we are laying quite a bit of emphasis on concerns that customers have right now. A lot of the customers we've spoken to have had questions about whether there's a future for Lumira and whether they need to move on to Analytics Cloud. So we've taken the time to compile information about this. We have slides and explanations. So do hang around, and there might be quite a few questions answered today. So the agenda for our webinar today, as I said, focuses on the latest version of the tool and what it means for customers in terms of product direction. We'll be kicking off with a brief look at the Convergence strategy and Lumira's position there. And then we'll also take a brief look at the new features that both Discovery and Designer have to offer. I will be doing a brief demo, diving into Designer and showing you some of these cool new features, and hopefully some more demos later on through the webinar. Subsequently, we're laying significant focus on customers' directions with the tool. We'll split this up into 3 segments. The first part of that is for customers who are considering adopting Lumira 2.2 just now, and what they need to consider while adopting this tool. And yes, that means we do think it's a good idea to start investing in this tool, even at this point. The second part is for customers who are using legacy BI tools, legacy SAP BI tools, such as Excelsius or Web Application Designer, and what their options are for migrating to SAP Lumira. The third part is for those customers who are on earlier versions of SAP Lumira, whether it's Design Studio or whether it's Lumira 2.0 or 2.1. We have information about why customers should look at upgrading and what they stand to gain and what the upgrade considerations are. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll be looking at addressing customers' concerns about the need to transition to SAP Analytics Cloud, about whether it's necessary at all or what customers need to consider before they even look at this decision. And finally, we'll also take a look at the future roadmap for the tool. And by the end of the session, I hope to have enough time on my hand to answer any questions that you guys have with respect to the tool. If we are running short of time, please be rest assured that I will be addressing your questions via email. Now, before we dive into today's topics, I'd like to give those of you who are attending Visual BI's webinars for the first time a brief idea of who we are and what we do. Visual BI is an end-to-end BI enablement firm. We focus on all BI products. We basically offer products, services, and training across different BI tools. We're SAP and Microsoft Gold partners and offer products, training, and a spectrum of services ranging from strategizing, implementation, and modeling for backend tools, all the way down to visualization and deployment on the front-end tools. We're basically a one-stop shop. We've had the opportunity to work with a number of esteemed customers over the years, as you can see over here, and we've gained outstanding relationships through our products, services, and training with all of them. These are the spectrum of offerings. I hope you're able to see it on screen now. Like I said, we range from front end to back end, all the way from implementation and strategizing through down to deployment. Some of our products include extensions for SAP Lumira Designer, such as VBX extensions and value driver trees. And we also have our cross-platform multiple tool consolidated portal for front-end BI tools. It's called VBI View. So if you are interested in our products, we do have more information about these on our website at www.visualbi.com. So to kick off our topic for today, we will first be looking at the current state of the convergence strategy from SAP, what this means for customers and what the current state of this strategy is. If you take a look right now, on the left-hand side is a slide presenting the latest version of the convergence strategy from SAP. That's Convergence 2.0. You can get more information about this slide from their product and roadmap website. We've grayed out some areas of this slide to lay emphasis on our tool of focus today, that's SAP Lumira. And as you can see, the convergence strategy positions SAP Lumira as a tool for both data discovery and for application design. Now, this version of the convergence strategy is as of June this year, and not much has changed since then with respect to the strategy itself. As you can see, SAP Lumira 2.2 is positioned to be a replacement for a lot of the popular legacy BI tools, including BusinessObjects dashboards or Excel sheets, analysis for OLAP, and also for the Web Application Designer. SAP Lumira over here, of course, refers to both Lumira Discovery, which is for agile visualization and data discovery on-premise, and Lumira Designer, which is for dashboarding and analytic applications. Now, both of these tools go hand in hand and they're capable of interoperation. But what's more important here is that the convergence strategy has clearly indicated that SAP Lumira still has a use case for data discovery for customers running on-premise data sources. And it's still going to be the flagship tool for analytic applications. There's a bit more information and evidence on the slides over here, which include on the left-hand side, a slide from SAP's roadmap for Lumira, updated September this year. And on the right-hand side, a slide from the BusinessObjects BI roadmap from earlier this year. And as you'll see, on the Lumira roadmap, SAP has still indicated two solutions for data discovery, and this includes Lumira Discovery as one of the solutions. Now, furthermore, SAP has also indicated that the support for these products will continue till at least 2024. Now, remember, it's not ending over there. As you can see over here, right below, SAP Lumira Designer is portrayed as the flagship product for enterprise analytic applications. And if you read the fine print, SAP has also indicated that for customers not looking at moving to the cloud, Lumira Discovery is still a very viable option for data discovery. SAP's plan, however, is to limit the number of new features coming to Discovery and focus on improving its stability and performance instead. As you can clearly see, there are no changes to Designer's roadmap, and the innovation and investment into this tool will continue. Now, combine this information with our slide here on the right of the timeline for BusinessObjects BI, and you'll see that there's a new release that's planned close to the last half of 2019, actually the last 2 quarters of 2019. Now, every new release has a minimum of 7 years mainstream support, and that means that along with BusinessObjects BI, their flagship tool, that's SAP Lumira, can be expected to have support till at least 2030, maybe even more going forward. Now, that by itself should offer enough evidence for customers who are concerned about SAP Lumira's future. SAP Lumira is here to stay. Now, again, as further evidence of what I'm talking about, SAP just came out with the latest version of SAP Lumira, that's 2.2, and it contains a number of new features that we'll just be taking a look at. First off, it's always good to take a look at the basic prerequisites to have SAP Lumira 2.2 in your environment. As you can see, the latest version of the tool will be supported both on BI 4.1 as well as BI 4.2. For 4.1, the minimum version support is Service Pack 10 and upwards, and while 4.2 has a minimum support for SP04. Of course, customers do need to have at least patch 1 installed. The requirement for these minimum upgrades for customers is because there is a new file type, the Lumx document that was introduced as Lumira Designer 2.0. Now, this is the latest extensions for all objects created using both Discovery as well as Designer, and hence you need the upgrade to support this info object type. Now, customers do need to note that Lumira also offers a couple of new features, scheduling and commentary as of 2.1 actually. And for customers to leverage these features, they'll need to be at least on BI 4.2. Now, these slides will be shared with participants of the webinar. So as indicated over here, you will be able to get more information on the specified links. Now, let's take a look at the enhancements in Lumira Discovery 2.2. SAP has ensured that this release of the tool focuses more on the stability and bringing the tool to parity with earlier releases, basically to get better performance out of it. So the number of features you'll see here are pretty limited, but you will find improved performance and stability with the tool. Some of the enhancements introduced are minor but very, very useful items, such as more support for number formatting and languages when using BW as a data source. And of course, more options for member presentations, that is being able to choose from text or key when you're acquiring data from a BW system. Now, this should come as a welcome addition to customers running BW shops with heavy emphasis on Lumira Discovery. On the generic side of the tool, though, the tool does have added improvements to filtering and linked analysis within storyboards. Now, these include improvements on measure-based filters and even more smaller but highly underrated options, such as being able to pass all dimensions between visualizations. Of course, I'm only highlighting some of the improvements over here, not all of them. And for a more comprehensive list, you could look at our blogs or follow the link given in this slide as soon as you get the presentation, and it should give you complete information there. Now for the features in SAP Lumira Designer 2.2. Keeping with their word, SAP has introduced quite a few features while also working on the performance enhancements for the tool. I've highlighted a few of these features here, and we'll be discussing some of these features in detail in the slides that follow. But if at all you do want to take a look at a more comprehensive list, again, we do have a blog separately for that as well, and we've given the link over here in our slides. Please feel free to visit it. Now, coming down to the actual features themselves, if there was just one feature that I could highlight in the latest version of Designer, it would be authoring. Now, this newest option from SAP gives developers the option of creating applications with areas that end users can modify at runtime. So we're talking about the capability to drag and drop new objects onto the canvas, resize or reposition these objects, copy and paste one object elsewhere, and also save all the work that is done, all at runtime for end users. So application designers can use a grouped list component, which is again new in 2.2, as well as a documents technical component, again a new component we'll be talking about, and they can give end users all of these options. Now, this new feature, authoring, gives a lot of flexibility for end users and application designers. It gives you the ability to almost build a thin client similar to Lumira Discovery using just Lumira Designer. This actually resembles an online composition feature that Design Studio 1.6 used to offer, but it actually has more flexibility than that. I'll be showing you all a demo of this feature shortly, so you'll be able to see it in action. Now, another new feature which deserves a fair share of the limelight is the documents technical component. Now, the use of this component is actually twofold. The first of its uses is the ability to refresh data sources that you acquired using Discovery from within Designer. So this is a requirement that most customers have been asking for a while. Now, in the earlier versions of the tool, data acquired through Discovery could only be refreshed through Discovery again. So even if you were using it inside Designer, to get the latest data, you'd have to go back to Discovery. With the latest addition, the tool actually allows you to perform this refresh from within Designer using a simple script. And the potential for just this application is huge. You could use it to build applications similar to what you see on Roam BI for offline consumption, just as an example. Now, the second use for the documents technical component is when you're using it in combination with authoring. It basically allows end users to modify any changes made by them during runtime and save those changes, basically. So you'll actually be able to get back to the state that you saved your application in. Now, the component actually saves changes authored within a composite, not the entire component or not all the authoring areas. It's just within a composite, but that in itself is a very huge feature. And of course, you'll actually get to see a bit more of this in action during our demo as well. Now, for customers using analysis for OLAP or web application designer or heavy BW users for that matter, I don't really have to explain the relief that a feature like variants could offer in answering maybe a host of prompts within a query. So SAP Lumira 2.2 introduces variants as part of Designer now, and these are of two basic types. The types can be configured within the properties of an application. So the first type is the ability to use variants within the Lumira document that is being executed. Now this is exclusive for that Lumix document alone, and it allows users to create, modify, and delete variants exclusive to that document. So these variants are actually shown within the inbuilt prompt window of Lumira Designer. It's a simple drop-down that users can select the variants from. The second type, and a little more powerful, is the ability to use the variants that have already been saved for BW queries. Now, these are not restricted to a particular document, and they'll pop up wherever these queries are used, whichever application that they're used in. And if there are multiple data sources, all of which have variants of their own, the users can actually select which data source they want to use a variant for, and then select the variant from a subsequent dropdown right next to it. As mentioned, this brings a whole lot of ease that tools like Analysis for Office or Web Application Designer used to offer in Lumira Designer now. So it makes it that much easier if you're looking at migrating from legacy SAP BI tools. On the performance side as well, there are a slew of new features that help quicken the loading of applications. So the first of these features is called a fast startup, and it's enabled within the properties of the application. When you enable it, any data sources that load on startup are delayed until the components have been rendered first. So when you're actually doing this, users will first see the components pop up, then the data sources will start to load. They might see a temporary smoke screen indicating that the data sources are loading, but we haven't seen these instances for more than a second or so, so it doesn't take too long. Kind of like lazy loading of data sources. So this option can actually be used when using data sources that load very quickly, so that the lag between the application actually showing up and the data sources subsequently loading is minimized. For other performance improvements, in case you are using long-running queries, then don't forget there are always options like background processing or query parallelization that can really improve the performance of your application. Now, there are a couple of other new options that optimize the performance. Component load optimization is one of them. It basically improves the performance by ensuring that only the libraries or the objects of components that are being displayed load when the application starts up. So this is opposed to previous versions where all the required CSS files and the JS files used to load whenever the application starts up, thus increasing the startup time. Additionally, there is another new feature called round trip optimization, where these round trips between the server and the web browser, every time you make a click or an action inside the dashboard, the round trip that happens between your browser and your web server is minimized. They're actually all queued together and sent as one whenever required. So basically, they reduce the round trip time and latency between your applications. So these options that I just talked about, both component load optimization and round trip optimization, both of these are internal to the tool, and the application designers will actually not have any controls to toggle them. They're already incorporated, but you will see the performance difference. So overall, there are quite a few new options that Lumira Designer offers to enhance the end user experience in terms of both flexibility and performance. So we'll take a look at a couple of these features in our demo. I am going to switch to my Lumira Designer. And what I've done over here is gone ahead and set up a small application. Now, this application as such is very, very simple, and you'll be able to see the outline view. Let me just pull it up. There is an unassigned data source that I'm going to assign a data source to at runtime. There's also another query just to show you guys what the variants look like inside Designer. Now, you can see that I have a few icons that allow me to basically author on this dashboard, but the important parts of the dashboard is the authoring technical component. Now, this new technical component is what actually will allow me to modify objects inside this application at runtime for end users. In addition, I've also used a document technical component so that any changes that I make to this particular document, I can actually save at runtime. The scripts for these are actually very simple. So I've loaded the save option inside the save icon. And you will actually see that it's a simple line of script. It basically references, so I'm just going to pull this up in just a second. It basically uses a single line of script called document.save that basically saves any changes to the application at runtime. In addition, this application is also using a composite. Now, the reason that I'm using a composite over here is your authoring is restricted only to composites, not to any other area inside an application. You can actually set other containers as authoring areas, but you'll have to use a script for that. I'll actually show you how that works. But if you want to use the properties of the authoring component, you'll have to use composites. The one that I'm using over here inside Designer is not very complicated. It's just a basic composite. And well, it does have some components inside, but I'm going to get rid of them. But otherwise, it's just an empty blank canvas. And I'm going to save this composite. And what I'll also do is synchronize with the BI platform. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and execute my application so you can see how the authoring feature actually works. One more component before we actually execute it is a grouped list component that basically allows me to drag and drop components inside the authoring area. Now, the composite is over here, and that is what has been set as the authoring area for this application. So what I'm doing over here is relatively simple scripting to achieve the functionality that you'll just see. So the application should start up right now. And you'll be able to see that, well, the composite is actually over here, but you won't see the outline. The moment I click on authoring over here, so I've set a script to enable authoring for that particular composite. And the moment I do that, you can see dotted lines appear indicating where I can modify objects. Now it's actually very simple. All I have to do is drag and drop things like a button or an icon inside. As you can see, I can drag and drop those components inside the canvas, increase or decrease their size, or even copy and paste these components elsewhere as well. Now, once I do that, I can always click on save. And the moment I do that, you'll see that the document says it's been saved successfully, which means the next time I open up this application or I reload this application, you should be able to see all the changes that we just made. So you should see these two buttons over there and the icons. And there you go. So I can switch it back to authoring and I can drag additional components inside and maybe even assign a data source to this chart. So what I'll do is quickly select the chart. I've added a little bit of scripting over here that allows me to select a data source on the fly. So I can actually search for the data source within my BW system and choose which query I want. Moment I click on OK, it gets assigned to the chart. And you can basically see how it works. Now there is another panel right below this composite. I can always switch the authoring area to the panel and add objects over there. But the caveat is when I'm adding objects to the panel and I click on save, the state of the application is not saved for the panel. Any changes I make within the composite are actually saved. Now, coming back to an application, you'll also see that it does have another query with variants in it. So just to show you what the variants feature looks like. Within the properties of an application, all I have to do is enable a variant mode. So you can see that there is a query variant that leverages the BW query's own variants inside, or a document variant that allows you to create your own inside Designer. I'm just going to force the prompts to come up on startup so that you'll be able to see how this works. And the moment I load that application, you'll be able to see that I have multiple values. I don't have any variants yet, but I can choose values and save those as variants. So let's say that I select multiple values over here. I could click on OK and then type in a name for that variant and click on save. And my variant actually gets saved and it's available inside the list. If I do want to give additional variants over here, I can always go back. I'll click on OK and save this as maybe variant 2. My application executes. I'm not actually showing you the data source anywhere because I haven't assigned it. But the next time I start up my application, you should be able to see the variants that we just created. So it quickly allows you to access result sets that you've stored right there. Quite a few useful features inside Lumira Designer with the introduction of variants, with introduction of documents, technical component, and authoring. And some of the existing features, such as being able to generate components at runtime. Now you can use these in combination with authoring and give yourself very, very effective use cases for the application. Now that you've taken a look at some of the newer features in action, we're going to go into the second part of our webinar. We're going to talk about customers who are looking to either adopt, upgrade, or migrate to SAP Lumira Designer or SAP Lumira 2.2. So to start off, we're going to address questions and concerns of customers who have not yet begun to leverage SAP Lumira, and they'd like to know more about the tool and its options. Now, for customers looking at just adopting Lumira Designer or Lumira Discovery, or for that matter, any front-end BI tool, it's vital to understand the kind of end product that you are looking at before you decide on the tool. So what kind of an end product are you looking at building for your end users? I hope that this slide that you're seeing over here provides a very high-level context to this end. So fundamentally, there are two types of end products that front-end BI tools can build. You have storyboards, formatted reports, dashboards, and applications. These differ on multiple counts. Their primary purpose, the level of detail they offer, the target end user, the kind of visualizations or interactions that they have, all the way down to even the number of data sources or the kind of data sources that you're using in Python. To elaborate a little bit, storyboards are merely documents containing visualizations. These visualizations answer basic ad hoc questions. These are typically what you would take into a business meeting or a presentation. They contain fewer or absolutely no interactions at all. They use fewer data sources, and building these storyboards typically doesn't take too long. They can be built pretty easily, even by business users, and they can use pretty much whatever kind of data source they want, whether it's a spreadsheet or it's a BW query. On the other hand, right next to it, these formatted reports are highly detailed, and they're usually scheduled or delivered to users who are looking for very detailed, very granular information about day-to-day operations. They typically do not offer any kind of a summarized view or too many visualizations. In fact, they are mostly tabularized, and depending upon their complexity about their data or the options for the end users, these formatted reports could end up taking a few hours or even a few days to build. Now, here's where there is a fine line of differentiation that's required: dashboards and applications. Now, when I talk about dashboards, these are more summarized. The interactions they offer might be minimal, but very, very simple interactions, such as just being able to filter. Typically, they should be a single page application. They should have only a single page, which offers all of the vital information that the end user needs to see at a glance. So you need to be able to open up a dashboard and quickly take in all the information that you need. On the other hand, applications, they have complex functionality, such as drill downs and data source navigations. They could have multiple pages, and they're generally a little more heavier than dashboards. The build time for these applications are also longer than dashboards. So typically they could take anywhere between a week or even a few weeks together, depending upon their complexity. There are actually plenty of differentiation points between all four types of end products that you can build. SAP Lumira as a tool can address three of these products given here. So with SAP Lumira, you could build storyboards, dashboards, or applications. You can build storyboards using Lumira Discovery and dashboards and applications using Lumira Designer. And it can actually handle detailed data, but that's not the use case for the tool. Right? So that's the first step that you need to consider when you're looking to adopt the tool. Another consideration point for customers is the type of user who's going to be using the tool. For example, if you want to give more power to end users, your line of business users, and you want to allow them to use any data source they want, spreadsheets, SQL queries, BW queries, HANA views, and you want to give them options to manipulate the data before they use it. So create their own calculations or modify the data a little bit. In that case, an ideal tool to use would be Lumira Discovery. Right? It's very suitable for them because it's very intuitive, easy to start using for a line of business user, and allows these users to perform what we call structured self-exploration, where they take in the data on their own and they perform their own exploration. On the other hand, if you'd like to deploy more controlled applications for your end users, applications with guided analytic paths which they can follow, where they can easily navigate, Lumira Designer is the tool to use. Typically, your IT team or your BI team can build and deploy customized applications for your end users, depending on what vertical or horizontal they'd like to see. And these applications could have options to filter, drill down, navigate, or even customize to a certain degree. Case in point is authoring. The products built over here will typically fall under the category of guided analytics. So you have structured self-exploration for discovery, and you have guided analytics for designer. Now, that being said, I don't want to make it seem like Lumira Designer is a very complicated tool, because it's not that line of business users cannot use it. It's just not as intuitive because it's a developer's tool, but all it takes is maybe a couple of days training and maybe a little bit of time working on the tool, and it's very, very easy to pick up. Not to mention, it also comes with a set of standard templates that you could use out of the box or even customize to meet or quickly build applications for your purposes. Now, along the lines of what we just discussed, one thing that most customers get caught up when trying to go for a BI tool is what they call self-service capabilities. What customers need to understand here is that self-service is a very relative term. It could mean a host of different things to different users. Take, for instance, the different groups of users that I've shown on this slide over here. Business analysts, they have deeper requirements when they say self-service. They typically want to be able to perform a range of different functions, such as manipulating data, merging data from different sources, build their own visualizations to answer any questions that they have, or publish their reports to a platform. On the other hand, if you take maybe a C-level executive, they would have far fewer expectations when they say self-service. To them, self-service merely means they want to have actions such as being able to drill down or navigate or schedule or comment on an application. So depending upon the kind of user that you're trying to cater to, you can choose the appropriate tool. In our example, a business analyst has more use for a tool such as Lumira Discovery, which is more self-service, which allows them to do all of these functions. But a CEO's requirements for self-service could probably be satisfied by a simple application built on Designer. Now, another important point to remember, self-service, when you say self-service, it doesn't necessarily mean that no IT involvement is there, because that's what most customers look at when they say self-service. IT will always be involved at some level, whether it comes down to providing a tool like Discovery and access to data for business analysts, or whether it comes to building an application for this C-level executives. IT is going to be involved somewhere in the picture, right? So you can't get rid of them completely just because you're going for self-service. More along the same lines, if you take a look at some of the common requirements from self-service tools, you'll see that a combination of these requirements are addressed by either Discovery or Designer. So whether you're looking at acquiring data, preparing data, visualizing it, exploring the data, or collaborating based on what you build, either Designer or Discovery can address both of these requirements. You could use a combination of both of these tools. And again, it's unlikely that a single set of users will want all of these requirements. They may want subsets of these. So usually one tool or another will address the requirements that you have. So accordingly, you could choose to start investing inside Lumira Designer, because as you can see, it can address most of the gaps or most of the requirements that you might have from your BI needs. Now, next up is the consideration when migrating from legacy BI tools, such as Excelsius or Web Application Designer. First off, most customers need to understand the reason why it's imperative to upgrade right now. The primary reason that tools like Excelsius or BusinessObjects Explorer need to be replaced is their dependency on Flash. Now, Flash, as you know, is going away in most browsers and operating systems because of a lot of security and performance concerns. So naturally, SAP is also going to be stopping support for Flash and Flash-dependent tools, basically, such as dashboards and Excelsius, and BusinessObjects Explorer by 2020. So this means that most customers will need to migrate their existing tools and their existing objects to the recommended tools for SAP. So this is going to be either SAP Lumira Designer or SAP Analytics Cloud. Now, while Lumira Designer actually replaces both BusinessObjects dashboards as well as Web Application Designer, it is also possible to build an app similar to the BusinessObjects Explorer. Now, if there's a little bit of time at the end of the webinar, I'd love to show you guys a demo of what we've done. We've done something that's very, very similar to BusinessObjects. Now, when you're choosing to migrate from legacy BI tools, there is a small caveat. The migration would require effort in manually rebuilding what you have on existing tools. But the good thing is most of the requirements that you might have from your existing tools can be addressed very easily by SAP Lumira. Take, for example, customers using dashboards or Excelsius. You'll find that Designer pretty much checks all of the boxes for the most common requirements from this tool. On the performance aspects, there are direct connectivity options to HANA as well as BW. So it eliminates the need for a spreadsheet for you to consume data. There are a lot of performance enhancement options as well, such as background processing or copy parallelization. And it can handle more data volume than Excelsius can, and it offers a host of features for end user collaboration. It offers features like scheduling, being able to create comments on a dashboard, or being able to bookmark the state of navigation inside a dashboard. And additionally, it's also possible to incorporate self-service features. Now, this is something that wasn't easily possible using Excel sheets or dashboards. This can be addressed inside Lumira Designer. Now, if customers are merely concerned about the range of components that Designer has, Excel sheets, as we know, had plenty, then this need can also be addressed with aftermarket extensions. There are plenty of components already available in Designer, but over and above, you do have aftermarket extensions and support for these extensions. Now, a large segment of customers who've been in love with Web Application Designer now have enough options to convert to Lumira 2.2. Again, this will be a manual rebuild, but some of the most sought after functionalities of WAD are now available in 2.2, either directly or as alternatives. For instance, your zero analysis template in Web Application Designer has a counterpart in Lumira Designer as a generic analysis template. This is also a ready to run template and can be used with queries on the fly. And not to mention, there are new features like support for BW variants, which should provide a lot of familiarity for existing application designer users. Most analytic capabilities, including drag and drop functionalities, drill downs, report to report interface jumps, and even bookmarks, they're all available on Lumira Designer out of the box. So if you're looking at building something that you had in WAD, it is going to be pretty easy to build it inside Designer as well. Customers who've been using BO Explorer, they will also need to consider switching to either Analytics Cloud or to Designer. Now, while the former is the recommended option by SAP, do keep in mind that using Lumira is also a very viable option, as most of the features within Explorer can actually be recreated. You can use scripting, you can use workarounds, or you can even use aftermarket components to bring an application that's very, very similar to BusinessObjects Explorer. And the best part is, your info spaces in BusinessObjects Explorer, your BI team can actually still curate the data sources as either BW queries or HANA views instead of these info spaces. And they can still allow end users to choose and analyze these on the fly. So you do have quite a bit of options for your end users as well. So if you are looking at migrating from existing BI tools, you do have plenty of options offered by SAP Lumira, and you can leverage one of these options to build exactly what you need. Finally, for customers already on existing versions of Designer, there are an own set of disadvantages of upgrading to Lumira Designer. Again, I said advantages over there. So most customers using Design Studio 1.6 today, they'll find themselves needing to upgrade to Lumira Designer now, considering that mainstream maintenance for Design Studio 1.6 and lower is not going to be supported after December this year. So this slide here shows you a screenshot from the SAP's product availability matrix, and you can use the link on this slide to take a look at that as well. So it gives you the exact end date as 28th of December this year. Now, the good thing is upgrading is not nearly as painful as one might perceive, and we'll go over these options in just a bit. Now, as you can see over here, moving from Design Studio 1.6 to Lumira Designer, it brings about a host of different changes. Now, the architecture of the tool is still going to be the same with respect to Designer. But one thing customers will need to consider is that Lumira Designer 2.0 and upwards drops the option for customers to continue using SAP UI5 Performance mode, which was available until 1.6. So from 2.0 onwards, customers will need to start using the SAP UI5M mode. So fortunately, this doesn't necessarily mean that customers need to convert their dashboards per se. They can still run it on the current version of Designer in a compatibility mode, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. Those customers who are already on 2.0 or 2.1, you still do have benefits, plenty of benefits in upgrading to 2.2. Now, a lot of the bugs until version 2.1 have now been mitigated in version 2.2, and customers upgrading from 2.0 you'll also find newer features that are very, very useful for collaboration, such as the BI commentary or scheduling. They'll all be available on Lumira Designer. And not to mention the features that we mentioned earlier, performance improvements and authoring also available in 2.2. So you have a host of different options there. When upgrading from earlier versions, so if you do decide to upgrade from 1.6, which you should be, the server add-on to be installed changes a little bit. So customers using Design Studio 1.6 and earlier would have seen separate add-ons on the server for Lumira and Design Studio. When you're upgrading to Lumira 2.0, there is a single combined server add-on for both Discovery and Designer. This houses the velocity engine that Discovery uses to acquire data sources and the BICS data services that both Discovery and Designer use to connect to live data sources, such as BW or HANA. Now, the combined server add-on reduces the effort for maintenance by administrators, but the client tools still need to be separate and they need to be installed on your system. Once you have decided to upgrade, if you're looking at upgrading existing applications from Lumira 1.31 to 2.0 or 1 or 2 Discovery, it's actually pretty easy. Once you made the upgrade on the tool, you could successfully convert all of your Discovery stories by simply opening them up and changing them as a 2.0 mode or a 2.1 mode and publishing them back to the BI platform. There are a few more options for customers on Design Studio 1.6. If you are looking at upgrading to 2.0 or above, you have two options with your existing applications. As long as they're on 1.6, you could still keep the applications in their exact format, their exact functionality. You don't have to change anything inside the application, but you could use something known as a legacy mode. It's a compatibility mode that's available inside 2.0 and above. So if you have 1.6 applications, you can still save them in 2.0 format and continue to run them without changing anything on the applications or losing any feature or functionality. The caveat is, if you do this, obviously the new 2.0 features or the 2.1 features or the 2.2 features are not going to be available for you to use. The second part is if you do decide to convert your applications to a 2.2 format, that's also pretty simple because all you have to do in that case is basically have your applications or your Lumex applications modified to the 2.0 format and republished on the BI platform. Thereby, your applications will convert to the SAP UI5M mode, but they'll have the slew of new features that's available inside Lumira Designer. Whether customers are looking at migrating their existing BI tools or upgrading to Lumira Designer, or even at adopting Lumira Designer as a tool, as you can see, SAP Lumira has hit all the right spots and offered a host of different options for end users, and it's very, very stable. So you can actually go ahead and start upgrading. So now we arrive at a question that most customers have been asking. Is Lumira going away? Do we have to transition to Analytics Cloud? The answer to that is pretty simple to understand, even if it's not an easy decision. So to lead off with an answer, I'm going to show you this slide, which is again from SAP's deck from September this year. It talks about different tools in the BI portfolio. And if you'll observe, I've only laid focus on Analytics Cloud and Lumira Designer. So Analytics Cloud is the recommended tool for data discovery, but Designer is also a recommended tool both for application design and data discovery. Now, Lumira Discovery might not be mentioned here, but in earlier slides, you did see that it is a viable complement for Designer, enhancing the features of Designer itself. Now, this should be proof enough that SAP Lumira is here to stay. It's actually on the recommended tool list for SAP, it's the flagship product. For on-premise customers with existing investments in BusinessObjects, it makes more sense to stick with SAP Lumira for these use cases. Whether you've already invested in a whole lot of assets for SAP Lumira so far, or you're just getting started, it makes more sense to leverage your existing environment for data discovery or application design than to set up, move to, and start building new objects on a whole new environment. This is especially so considering that Designer will still continue to get investments and innovations going forward. If you do consider moving to the cloud, then SAP Analytics Cloud is still a viable option for customers. Now, we have shown the slide earlier. We do have guidelines towards making the right decision. So there is pretty much a flow that you can follow to decide whether you should still continue building on Lumira Designer or whether you should adopt Analytics Cloud as a tool. It basically takes into account different parameters, such as do you already have existing investments in BusinessObjects? You're looking at migrating to the cloud, or you're looking at building new applications on premise, where your data sources lie, and what your end users' requirements are. So there are quite a few options for you to consider, and this particular slide is updated frequently. Again, we will share more updates of it, so watch out on the Visual BI space for this. But I will be sharing this slide with all of you guys, so you can take a closer look at it then as well. No, surprisingly, a lot of the customers looking at moving to SAP Analytics Cloud actually have a single use case. They want to see a value driver tree, more planning functionality. Now, this is not available out of the box in Lumira Designer, so a lot of customers are still actually considering Analytics Cloud. But what you need to understand is there are other options. Like I said, Designer supports extensions. So you do have extensions. In fact, Visual BI has its own value driver tree that you can run on top of Lumira. So if you are purely looking at Analytics Cloud for planning-based functionality, or merely visualizing using value driver trees for a better understanding of the operational drivers in your organization, a viable alternative is your value driver tree on Designer. It runs on all devices. It's very flexible and very, very seamless. And hopefully I should show you a quick demo at the end of this session. Point, I think that pretty much answers the questions you had about SAC. If you are an existing customer on-premise and you're looking at upgrading, or if you're looking at moving, then the only reason behind that is because you think Lumira's development is going to stop. The news is that it's not. And if you take a look at the future roadmap, there's more evidence of this. Now, this is the latest version of the roadmap for SAP Lumira. And you'll see that the current innovations are in Lumira 2.2, and you'll see all of these new features over there. But what's more important is you can see innovations as far ahead as 2021. So there is a product vision for at least till 2021. So if you are thinking that 2.2 is probably the last version of the tool coming to your desktop, there is evidence over here to suggest that that is not so. There is going to be advancements inside the tool. As SAP has clearly mentioned, there is going to be a lot of investment towards Designer. You can see that there are more investments on the planning side and more investment on the self-service side for end-user personalizations, and even added support, improved support for the latest versions of HANA and BW. So you will see a lot of investments going forward, and the tool is going to advance, and for the foreseeable future, it's here to stay. So if the only thing that's holding you back is whether or not the tool will last, it's got at least a proven life ahead. There is a vision for the tool at least till 2021. Support, as we saw earlier, at least till 2030. So you should be safe starting off investments or continuing your investments in Lumira Designer. Now, that pretty much brings us to the end of our webinar. And at this time, we do have a little bit of time on hand to take questions from the audience. I do see quite a questions over here, so I'll try to address them one by one. So Sven has a question. Lumira works with which version of SAP BI mobile app? We have version 6.6.5, but the newest is 6.82. When, as per the product roadmap, it should still work with 6.6, so you should be able to see most of the changes that you made inside your applications. Authoring on composites, however, is not a feature that you can see on mobile devices, so you might have to look out for that. Now, there is another question from Leonardo. Will the modifications that end users make in authoring mode impact the original document published by a designer? The answer to that is no. The authoring mode or the changes that you make in authoring mode are exclusive to the document. You can still save those changes back to your original Lumex document using the document's technical component. But if you don't do that, then your original document is not going to be affected. Michael Lawrence Shaw, are variants available without designer? Michael, I'm not really sure what you mean. The variants is a new property that's available exclusively in designer to answer prompts. It basically leverages both BW query variants as well as designer's own variants. So I hope that does answer your question. I do have another question from Luis Villa. In Lumira 2.2, how do you control user access to discovery and designer tools? Example, I do not want business users to have access to designer, but only to discovery. Now, Luis, it's relatively simple. Users can only access these tools while they have the client tools inside their desktops. Now, in case of designer, the products that you build will still be available on the platform, but the BusinessObjects BI platform itself has quite a few options for you to restrict the objects and the folders that your end users see. So if you choose to, you could choose not to show them any objects built in any of the folders over there using designer or discovery. And if you're talking about creating and you want to give them tool access, well, it's simply the tool that they have installed on their desktop. So I hope that answers your question as well. I do have a question from Krishna Prasad Vura. When published dashboards using Lumira Designer, do they have to be listed on the BI Launchpad, or do you need to use a separate URL to access your dashboards? If you need separately, does VBI View support? Krishna, when you publish dashboards on the BI platform, you should be able to see these dashboards on the Launchpad. Whether you're using the traditional BI Launchpad or the fortified version, you should still be able to see all the Lumex documents as long as you have access to them. So you need to have access to the object and to the folder in which the object is stored, and you should be able to see all the Lumex documents there. However, if you do still want to access it separately on a browser, you can also use the OpenDoc URL for the document and open it up inside your browser. As far as your question about VBI View, yes, it does support it. It does actually show you all of your Lumex documents as well as a host of other BI documents that you create on your platforms. Do you have a similar comparison between Power BI and Lumira Designer? From Wandre. We don't have a comparison between Power BI and Designer at this point of time. We do have quite a few blogs addressing concerns about both the tools and the pros and cons about both tools. So you could take a look at our blogs. But again, this is something that is a working document for us. We do also have webinars comparing different self-service BI tools. But for those of you actually trying to cover, compare Power BI and Lumira Designer, one thing that is essential to understand is Lumira Designer is an application building tool, whereas Power BI is more of a storyboard or a dashboard building tool. I'm going to go back to that slide that I showed you earlier. Remember, different BI tools have different use cases. So if you're talking about things like Power BI, you can see where it fits in. But if you want to build complex analytic applications with a lot of guided analytic paths, multiple data sources, cross-linking, drill downs, Power BI is not going to be able to do that very easily. Lumira Designer is a tool that's built especially for that, for you to build highly customized applications. So to compare Power BI with Lumira Designer is to compare apples with oranges. So there's no comparison over there. So it's very important for you to understand what the end product is going to be, what you build with each of these tools. I have a question from Abhi Singh. Can I upgrade from 1.6 to 2.2 directly, or do I need to go from 1.6 to 2.0 and then onwards? Abhi Singh, you do not need to upgrade to 2.0 and then to 2.1. From 1.6, you should still be able to upgrade directly to 2.2. All the legacy BI modes as well as your normal Lumira documents mode are still available in 2.2, so you should be able to open up applications over there and quickly convert them to 2.2 format. And again, I do have another question from Abhi Singh. Will SCN add-in components for 1.6 work out of the box with 2.2? Unfortunately, Abhi, that's not something that I can answer because SCN components are built either recreationally or as support by different developers. They don't have a specified support system over there. So the short answer is they work, you're lucky. If they don't, there's really nothing you can do about it except perhaps contact the developer who built that component and ask them if they have an updated version. We are running short of time today. I can take one last question, but for those of you who still don't have all of your questions answered, please be rest assured that I will answer it by mail. So again, the last question that I'm going to answer today is from Abhi Singh again. If I am an on-premise customer who also own SAC licenses, do you still recommend Lumira for data discovery or simple dashboard scenario? Why? Please, Abhi, again, this is a very good question, and I think that brings us to the crux of our webinar today about Lumira Designer, Discovery, and SAC. And to answer your question, I'm going to show you this slide. What you should be considering, whether you want to build applications on Designer or Discovery or SAC Cloud, is not whether or not you have the licenses for it. It's about where your data sources are and what your current investments are. If you're an on-premise customer connecting to on-premise data sources, remember that your on-premise object tools can connect better to those data sources than a tool on the cloud. Now, that being said, if you are running a lot of data from SAP SuccessFactors or Ariba, which are all cloud-based tools, SAP Analytics Cloud will do obviously a better job of running them. So it ultimately comes down to the end user functionality that you want. Do remember that if you do build a dashboard or a simple storyboard on Discovery, you still have the option of sprucing it up using Designer. So you can actually take your application over there and interoperate, and it's not like these tools are going to go away. So the primary focus for your investment is not going to be how many licenses you have. It has to be about what kind of data you're connecting to and what functionality you're looking for. We do have quite a few more questions from a lot of other attendees, and I would like to thank you all for the questions. I will reach out to you individually and answer your questions through an email. Thank you very much. We do have upcoming webinars from Visual BI, so please do stay tuned to our website to know more. And thank you all once again.